There are many other.
This is right, Arab.
Hello there and welcome along to WION Live broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and coming up we'll bring you up to speed with stories developing around the world. We'll start with the headlines. The first in-person summit of leaders of the Quad countries, Australia, India, Japan and the US, will be held on the 24th of September in Washington in a bid to push back against China's growing assertiveness. A senior leader of the Taliban says the Afghan women should not be allowed to work alongside men, in yet another sign of a rollback of women's rights in the country. Norway's centre-left opposition parties have won Monday's general election and will now negotiate how to form a coalition, with climate change and a widening wealth gap expected to be central to discussions. The Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin is absolutely healthy after going into self-isolation following the detection of coronavirus cases in his inner circle. And Hurricane Nicholas slams into the Texas coast, with meteorologists warning of life-threatening flooding from Mexico to storm-battered Louisiana. The first ever in-person Quad meeting is all set to take place on the 24th of this month. US President Joe Biden will be hosting the leaders of Japan, Australia and India at the White House. The Biden administration says hosting the leaders of the Quad shows the White House's priority to engage in the Indo-Pacific in order to meet the challenges of the 21st century. A statement sets out the focus of the summit as deepening ties and advancing practical cooperation in multiple areas. And discussions are expected to take place on issues such as promoting a free and open Indo-Pacific in the face of Chinese threats, combating COVID-19, addressing the climate crisis, partnering on emerging technologies and cyberspace as well. Joe Biden's Indo-Pacific coordinator, Kurt Campbell, had said in July that the long-planned in-person meeting should bring decisive commitments on vaccine diplomacy and infrastructure. Japanese media reports that talks will likely also touch on Afghanistan, as well as offer a chance to present a united front before a G20 meeting in Rome in October. The announcement from the White House has also confirmed the visit of Indian PM Modi to the United States. What we know so far about PM Modi's tentative schedule is that he's expected to hold bilateral talks with US President Biden on the 23rd of September. This will be the first in-person meeting between the two leaders since the change of guard in Washington. On the 25th of September, Modi will be travelling to New York for the United Nations General Assembly meetings. He's expected to address this session, and the focus will be on UN reforms, climate change, the COVID crisis and vaccines, and counter-terror. Afghanistan is also likely to feature. Now, returning to that Quad meeting, just 2 days ago, India and Australia rebuffed Chinese criticism of it. China had referred to the Quad as Asian NATO. Indian Foreign Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar said the Chinese criticism is a misrepresentation of the facts and insisted the Quad is focused on non-military issues, unlike NATO. His views were echoed by the Australian Foreign Minister, who said that Quad members are champions of ASEAN centrality. A virtual meeting of the Quad leaders was held in March this year. Members pledged to work closely on COVID-19 vaccines and the climate, and to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific in the face of challenges from Beijing. The diplomatic grouping, dubbed the Quad, or Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, was first formed in 2007 and has been holding regular meetings since 2019. It's seen as a bid to counterbalance China's growing economic and military reach in the Asia-Pacific region. The world has been watching closely to see what the Taliban's new rule in Afghanistan would mean for women's rights. Early Taliban promises seem to be fading.
Women's role in the government will be limited. They can work in medicine and they can get some education. They can go to separate universities. Still, it is not decided whether they can go to separated universities. But co-education is not allowed in our government, and women hospitals will be separate hospitals. Men and women cannot work together, and that is clear. And they are not allowed to come to our offices and work in the same space. And that is also very clear.
Now, the Taliban have not officially announced these measures yet, but they would be in contrast to the assurances made by the Taliban. On the record, the group had said women would be allowed to study and work, they'd be elected to the government, harsh laws wouldn't be imposed against them, and free and fair movement would be granted. But many Afghan women have growing fears now the Taliban will take away freedoms they gained in the last 20 years. The United Nations Secretary-General has echoed those concerns. He says Afghan women and girls want to ensure the gains they've made are not lost, that doors are not closed, and that hope is not extinguished. But Taliban leaders are arguing that they have fought for 40 years to bring Sharia law in, with all its implications for women.
No mixed education, because we have fought for almost 40 years to bring the Sharia law system into our government. Sharia law does not allow women and men to get together or sit together under one roof until there is much need. For example, we can take a woman, a doctor, male doctor here, no problem, but they cannot get education together. They cannot work together. That is not allowed.
The Taliban have already made some changes. Girls will be allowed to study, but not alongside boys. And female teachers will not be allowed to teach male students. Some have suggested the new rules will lead to the exclusion of women from education because universities don't have the resources to provide separate classes. The Taliban government is also expected to alter the academic curriculum to make it more Islamic. UNESCO says girls in primary school increased from almost 0 to 2.5 million after the fall of the Taliban in 2001. The UN body's report says the female literacy rate nearly doubled in a decade to 30%. But the fear is this could now go in the other direction. Women will be required to wear hijabs at all times, but it's still not clear if additional face coverings will be made compulsory. The Taliban's newly announced government does not include any women. The Women's Affairs Ministry has been replaced by the Ministry of Vice and Virtue. That department is known for abusing women who dressed immodestly and were seen outside without a male guardian. But despite potential dangers, many Afghan women are determined to fight for their rights. In the capital city of Kabul, women have been seen on the streets defying the Taliban, demanding equal rights and the free will to live. To the UK now, where a former minister has slammed the UK's Parliament for what she says is its drinking culture. She claims many ministers reek of alcohol while voting, and she says Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced she was being promoted to the cabinet without asking her. Former Minister Tracy Crouch says this has left her feeling disillusioned about Westminster.
A glass of wine or a few beers over the weekend may help some loosen up before they gear up for the next week. But what happens when you show up to work drunk or hungover, especially when your place of work is the UK Parliament? Former UK Minister Tracy Crouch has slammed the UK Parliament for what she calls is a heavy drinking culture. She says many members of Parliament vote reeking of booze. Crouch says that she had been left feeling disillusioned by colleagues who voted in the House of Commons inebriated. Some had allegedly missed votes while others voted the wrong way. She has accused UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson of promoting her to the cabinet without even asking her, a role that she had to turn down. In an interview with a UK news broadcaster, Crouch was asked if she had made a conscious decision to avoid bars in Westminster. She said, and I quote, "I would not say that I never went to the bars in the Commons because that is not true. But I do not try to drink in Westminster. It is not to say that, moral high ground about drinking at Westminster. I just think I became quite upset, quite disillusioned by the number of people going through division lobbies reeking of booze. It is not a pleasant environment." This prompts an obvious question. Is alcohol even allowed in the UK Parliament? It is. Are there any repercussions for showing up to work drunk? Only if ministers cause a brawl. In 2012, an MP, Eric Joyce, had been banned from buying alcohol in the Houses of Parliament. He had spent a night in custody after an alleged drunken fight. There are nearly 30 bars within the Palace of Westminster. Bars were closed when the pandemic broke out. However, many hospitality venues started selling alcohol again when the lockdown was lifted. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Britain's Prince Andrew's legal team has denied allegations levelled against him in a civil suit. Virginia Giuffre claims Prince Andrew sexually abused her when she was a teenager. The Duke of York's team of lawyers insists the Prince has not been served legal papers in the case.
Britain's Prince Andrew's lawyer has rejected the claims made in a civil lawsuit. A woman had accused Prince Andrew of sexually assaulting her when she was 17 years old. US-based lawyer Andrew Brettler has challenged whether the case could even be brought. A hearing was held in the US District Court in Manhattan. Brettler said in 2009 plaintiff Virginia Giuffre appeared to have signed away her right to sue Prince Andrew in resolving a separate lawsuit. 38-year-old Giuffre had said that Prince Andrew abused her about 2 decades ago. This was around the time when Jeffrey Epstein was also sexually abusing her. Prince Andrew has denied these allegations. Brettler has said that the allegations are baseless and non-viable. Brettler has also said that Giuffre had not served Prince Andrew properly under UK law and the Hague Convention. Giuffre's lawyer rejects this claim. 61-year-old Prince Andrew is a former friend of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein had reportedly killed himself in a Manhattan jail in August 2019. He then stepped down from his royal duties. Many charities have distanced themselves from him, given the allegations of sexual assault and his links to sex offenders. Giuffre's lawsuit puts Prince Andrew in a tough spot. If he ignores it, he could be held in default. If he decides to defend himself, he could be facing years of legal battle. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
A new government is set to take charge in Norway after the Labour Party there defeated incumbent Erna Solberg in an election dominated by questions around climate change and the future of the oil industry. Solberg conceded defeat after preliminary results showed the centre-left gaining a majority when 95% of the votes were counted. Opposition leader Jonas Gahr Store is therefore set to start coalition negotiations.
Vi har gitt oss rollen som den ledende kraften I norsk politikk de neste 4 årene. Vi har lagt ned en formidabel innsats for å komme dit. Nå skal vi feire, sove litt, og så blir vi klare for innsats. Vi skal forandre Norge og verden.
The recent Code Red for Humanity report from the United Nations turned out to be a talking point in the elections, favouring the left parties who wanted reforms in the oil industry.
Det på sin plass også, og jeg vil gjerne få lov til det, og gratulere Jonas Gahr Støre med det som nå ser ut som et klart flertall for å skifte regjering.
This all brings to an end the 8-year-old rule by the Conservative Party in Norway. The change in government means the Nordic region, consisting of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway and Sweden, will soon be a bastion for social democratic parties. To Africa now, and in central Nigeria, many farmers are fleeing violence in rural areas. This has disastrous consequences when it comes to crop production. Nigeria can no longer produce enough food to feed its population.
Amakaha fled bandit attacks and kidnapping in central Nigeria's agricultural belt. This year, the rice farmer will have to make do with an 8-hectare plot near Makurdi, the capital of Benue State. It pales in comparison with the vast fertile land he had to abandon 2 hours away.
I do about 100 hectares of farm. I was there for many years. But this year, I was unable to reach my farm after plowing, harrowing.
He is one of many who have deserted their farms in a region known as the breadbasket of Nigeria. But it is also the setting of deadly clashes over land. Farmers blame herders' livestock for destroying their fields. Both sides attack each other. Climate change and population explosion in a country of 200 million people only makes things worse. The conflict has grown into a serious security crisis with bandit attacks and ransom kidnappings.
So this insecurity now has displaced everybody. We were not able to farm. Do you understand? So this place you see is where I'm managing to feed my family. I managed to harvest some maize.
More than 9 million Nigerians could face food insecurity this year, according to the United Nations. The state governor and member of an opposition party warns the entire country's economic growth is at risk.
If you have more than 1.5 million people who are displaced and cannot go to their ancestral home, where they do their farming, it becomes a big challenge. It is amazing the level of destruction and disruption of farming activities.
What's more, the crop shortages are driving up food prices, which rose by more than 22% in June. According to this economist, Nigeria must reopen borders that were closed to fight food smuggling and drive down coronavirus infections.
When you open the borders, you bring in enough for the local market and the price will be forced to go down. Until we're able to produce enough of these food items, the price will never go down. And are we able to produce them right now? No, because the farmers are not there and there is nothing to protect them in their farms.
But farmers in Benue State want the government to solve the conflict instead of importing food to bring down prices. They hope one day to feed their country again, themselves.
Now, life in space isn't easy. Day-to-day activities are challenging when you are in a no-gravity zone. Astronauts, of course, have to manage all of that, from eating, drinking, working out, to sleeping, brushing their teeth and washing their hair. I will leave you with a report on that as we wrap up this edition of WION Live broadcast from here in London. I'm Ollie Barrett. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Do join us then. For more news and updates, stay tuned to WION World is One.
2, 1.
For systems check. Rub that in. And then I like to take my comb.
We have a great variety of food up here.
2 different general types of food.
Go ahead and put some of this no-rinse shampoo. And then I go ahead and I rub it in a little bit, just like you would on Earth.
And then we also have freeze-dried food.
So all of the water content has been sucked out. This is just basic asparagus, so we need to add the water back in. We want to make sure all that water is mixing in, and then we usually put it here inside the food warmer.
And then
in any direction. can eat upside down if I want to.
All of the liquid that's in those packets, you know, if you are eating too fast and you get some of that liquid airborne, it's going to go everywhere. It's going to get on your crewmates. You're going to find it a week later, you know, by the ductwork or something. And so every little thing that you take for granted on Earth when all your stuff stays put is a little bit more challenging in space. So you do learn, those things become second nature, but it does take a little bit of time to get used to.
Space makes eating a lot more fun. You can turn your spoon upside down, or even let it go, and nothing's going to fall off.
This is right, Arab.